Continuing on, so next we have Replaced. Replaced is a very boxer style action adventure game where it's mostly 2D, something similar to like Limbo, where you move around, you interact with objects to get to higher places, you climb up and down areas to traverse the map. And then, unlike Limbo, which has it also has these combat sequences, which is, I guess, very similar in style to the Arkham series, where you want to hit, and then you have a when the enemies have a prompt above their heads, you can counter or dodge out of the way, and you also have finishes where you sort of finish enemies off and all that. What stood out to me for Replaced, and I think was very amazing, was really the graphic design. Really, even though it's a voxel world, the lighting that was done for the game, the amount, the shading, the shadows, all this was very has close to one for one for a real location itself. And that was something that really stood out to me. Uh, it's also had a very strong use of 2D and 3D perspectives, even in this voxel environment, which also sold a lot of immersion, and it also sold that sort of action movie feeling when it came to playing the whole thing. Another thing that was amazing about it was definitely the combat. I think it was very smooth, it was seamless, and some of these finisher animations were really, uh, really crisp, really tight, and really felt. Again, it goes back to that idea that I didn't really feel like I was playing an action, fighting game. I was really more like in an action movie itself, which how with how Replace set up its sort of environments, right? So for me, I think it's definitely up there. Again, this first impressions, I think there was a lot of questions with regards to the story because there wasn't really any other than a few notes, a few dialogue sequences. So I can't really comment much on that. And also in terms of again combat, how they manage to scale up combat, right? And I think those are very critical points of this kind of game, right? Okay, so now that I sort of say it myself, I think that that's something that it's not really a flaw. Why I'm booting it down is not really because of it's a flaw, but because there are these core elements uh that I would like to judge on but I will understand because it may be spoilers, may not be something in a 1.0 release. I mean, may not be something that is placed in the demo, but yeah, ultimately, while the action sequences and the combat is S tier, I think without that narrative holding it together, I think it could be something that becomes very repetitive, especially on the combat front, if you're not able to uh spice it up, right? So I think that's why I'm probably pushing it below. Okay, next. Phonopolis. Uh, I think Phonopolis is has a I wouldn't say it's opposite. I would say that it's it's sort of the replace demo, but done in a way that again that that emphasis on story is quite strong, right? So Phonopolis is more of a point and click adventure game with this sort of paper style that the artists have used to create the environments, which makes it very unique in style. Uh, and it has these. puzzle segment so far. I think for the duration of its runtime, where you're basically clicking on certain things, trying to combine or move things in certain ways to trigger certain outcomes, right? So typical point and click adventure puzzle solving kind of thing, right? And I think in its initial premise, it also showed a bit of the main plot, the main sort of hook that was that underline this whole game. And so for me, I think from that, if they are able to, why it goes up in S is that if they are able to replicate this puzzle solving level throughout the game, they are able to replicate the narrative elements throughout the game while expanding on these. I feel like it's something that could even rival, like that escape from Monkey Island sort of feeling when it comes to narrative adventure and puzzle solving. So yeah, something I'm definitely looking forward to. Okay, next up, Pantalasia. For Pantalasia, it's a quirky game, weird in a sense. So what the initial premise is that you're, I would say, an AI that is within a submarine and it crashes into this underwater sort of civilization. And you're basically, it's also a point and click sort of puzzle adventure where basically in this civilization you try to solve puzzles to find out why you're here, where this place is, how to get out, and all that. And yeah, I think it's a also a very curious sort of game, right? I think it's unlike Phonopolis, which I feel like as long as it copies and pastes this level, the level of problem solving it shows. I think Fantasia is something that is more of a question mark, right? Like the demo itself was strong in terms of the puzzles, in terms of the mystery, solving it. But because of how quirky its concept is, I could see a case where the 1.0 mix has things that are very weird or uh, very difficult to solve or to understand, right? And that is, I guess, my main gripe about it, right? And it's something that I'm not as confident on. If I were to, let's say, between this and Phonopolis, like which one I would recommend, right? But I think the initial style in the demo shown, the initial puzzles in the demo shown were clear enough in terms of what they were trying to go for. And I think that's why, uh, be- because of this idea of weirdness, this idea of risk taking, I think it's something that I would definitely want to look out for in terms of the 1.0, in terms of the final product. Like, oh, what is this mystery? Is there going to be certain things that I really need to think out of the box and really challenge myself to solve? And I think Fantasia definitely aims to scratch that itch. Okay, next, Outbound. Okay. Outbound. It's I think what they initially marketed is as this caravan adventure crafting survival game where you drive around this caravan and you build stuff and you try to unlock new upgrades to make things more interesting and such, right? So it's like I think the initial premise they saw on or the main character talks about was that they wanted to get away on a trip and stuff, and that leads on to my biggest gripe with it is that it doesn't seem to be a game where there is any narrative uh, idea behind it. There's no, okay, maybe I'm doing this, like if you're in playing something like The Forest or Green Hell, you're doing survival to in the context of trying to escape, right? Or if you're playing something like Stardew or Fields of Mistria, you're trying to um, earn enough money or try to grow your crops so that you can revive the sort of dead community, or you can sort of revive the spirits or something along those lines. But in Outbound, from what I played, there is no such context put in place. Technically, you could not do anything in this game other than the basic survival, and you could still get by, right? So I think that that initial um, premise is something that is missing. But outside of that premise, I think there was a lot of stuff that was quite um, tried and tested, right? In terms of, okay, you want to collect certain goods. I mean, not certain goods, but collect certain resources to refine them to other resources. Trying to find certain upgrades to improve your efficiency. And of course, in terms of the design, the forests and the rivers and the mountains, all of these look very nice and appealing. But I think the main problem is that without a certain context, I feel like there's nothing uh, to keep playing for, right? Unless you're the kind that really enjoys going into Minecraft creative mode and just building your own things and all that, then maybe that idea of just creating your own place could be interesting for you, right? But for me, yeah, it's I think there are some serious flaws that would need to be looked into. Yep. Okay, next is Hosey. Hosey it's also a cozy game. Mainly we're trying to design these broken down or dilapidated buildings into a nice livable space where you want to stay at. So this involves clearing out the trash, painting over the walls, putting in furniture and designing it to your liking. Uh, for me, I think it's interesting. I think it would have been something that I would have liked. Uh, but for me, I feel like there were quite some serious issues. Oh, I don't think I should put Rel here. I think I'll put Rel more like C. Yeah, not really my jam. But for me, Hosey is kind of having these serious issues in quite a number of quality of life areas. So one of the things is that the controls when it comes to cleaning up or when it comes to painting over the place is they're very clunky. They don't really map very well to the area. So for example, if I wanted to paint over a wall, for example, and there's a corner in that wall, right? So the paint tube sort of isn't able to uh, land itself at that corner, even though I want to paint that corner, right? It sort of gets it swings everywhere. It doesn't move in the way I would want to, right? And another example is, for example, when it comes to moving trash, I think it's also a bit clunky in terms of the movement itself, right? Another thing that was a bit uh weird I would say, is that uh, especially in the first two levels, is that a, l- a lot of this idea of creating your own space is that you have the freedom to choose what furniture you will like, how you will want to place it, and to mm, make it seem nice, right, from the design. The thing is that you're given a lot of furniture pieces, right? I think in the first area alone, I had like six plants, four chairs, right? And this is just more of like a attic kind of space or a study sort of space. So you had a lot of this furniture that you had to put in your design, and ultimately, I out of the six plants that I got, like I think I threw like four of them into the sort of storage crate, which, by the way, the storage crate only holds a limited number of items, right? So ultimately, I had a lot of excess furniture that was just laying around that I tried to make it look nice, but ultimately ended up being way too cluttered. And right, for a game that is supposed to be that has literally cozy at the end of it, right? It didn't really seem cozy to me at all. So to me, I'm like second guessing myself. Am I supposed to be putting these in a specific layout to make it look cozy? If not, why is there so many furniture pieces, right? And so yeah, I think that was the main conflict, and I think that is the biggest issue with Hose itself. Hopefully, after the demo, they do improve on that. But for me, yeah, until they have that improvement, I think it's something that is a bit dubious to go into. Hey, Gambonanza. Gambonanza is it's another roguelike. It's more chess oriented. So basically, you have chess pieces that you can put on the field, and your goal is to take all of your opponent's pieces while keeping yours alive. Right? And in order to do that, similar to uh, roguelike nature of games, you have your sort of artifacts, which in this game are called gambits, that let you do certain special things. So, for example, the very first run you have, you're given, I think it's Thunderbolt, or like basically it's a legendary gambit that lets if your pawn captures a piece, you skip the enemy turn. So the idea is to have multiple pawns, uh, your pawn consecutively taking all the opponent pieces until it gets to promote. And then usually by the time it promotes, you usually take the game from there, right? So I think that premise itself is intriguing. It has a very high level of skill ceiling, which I think that's my biggest gripe with the game is that chess is hard, right? Chess is not an easy game to play. Vanilla chess is. So now that you have this game where you could have three bishops as your enemies show up, right? Or you have like four knights, right? And you know every space is taken unless you have a specific gambit, or you have certain tiles that let you regain your tempo, right? Otherwise, I think the game you would find yourself being destroyed or more often than not because of how much the deck is sort of stacked against you, right? So for that reason, I think Gamelanza is something that is. I think if you're a chess aficionado, you love chess, you want to take your trading game to like your piece trading game to the next level. I think there's something you is worth to check out. But gameplay wise, yeah, it's not for me. Okay, next is Forage Wizard. So I think Forage Wizard doesn't appear exclusively in Next Fest, but it was a demo for a game that I played 1 2 months back, so I thought to include it as well. Um, so what Forage Wizard is basically you are a wizard and you collect resources, and like an idler game, you try to aim to automate your resource collection, and you want to keep upgrading to get better resources and better automation so that you can basically sort of complete the game by having certain amount of resources, right? I think out of all of the idle games, I feel like Forage Wizard is the slowest to get the automation running, right? Out of everything in this list right now. I think there's only like Scritchy and maybe I think it's Scritchy, yeah. But I think okay, maybe talking about all the sort of automation games that I played, yeah, it's the slowest. So I think for that, it's something that even though I like automation games, I feel like it's something that ultimately I wouldn't really buy because of how sort of slow it gets started, right? And again, it doesn't really have that same level of dopamine that something like Scritchy may have, or something like even maybe Factorial will have. And even then, I don't really like Factorial that much. So yeah, not very high. Okay, next is Recoin, the coin pusher roguelike. For Recoin, I feel like I need to play more of it to be able to have a take. My initial take is that mm, so what you have is that you have again another roguelike. You have coins. You have to get coins to get a certain number of score, and you can when you have also this meta resource, which is your okay not meta resource but uh investment resource, which is your tickets, which you use to buy better tokens that will help you increase the points, increase the size of your coin, maybe destroy your bad coins, etc., so that you can keep getting higher and higher number of coins. Right. I think for red coin, one of my gripes with it, again, I think you need to play more to be able to understand, is that you're oftentimes not really uh, aware of how you can hit your score level, right? So I think a lot of the times is that, for example, something like bilateral, for example, there is a clear communication to the player in terms of the approximately the amount of score that they would receive, right? Of course, there's some RNG involved. Maybe, for example, you have lucky cards, so you have a 5% chance to hit. But in general, for example, if I have, let's say, three jokers, and maybe a few enhanced cards, maybe I'll get like a certain number of points, right? And for a lot of newer roguelites that come in, that communication between the upgrade and the final result is something that isn't very clear, right? Sometimes they do it so that again, if you have these insane runs, you get like these insane numbers, and then you're like, whoa, dopamine go brr. But oftentimes, you sort of hit way below the mark, and you sort of ask yourself, oh, why is it that I'm hitting way below the mark? And oftentimes you don't really understand, right? And so I think Redcoin is in that area where you have these coins. They do certain things. They have certain combinations But ultimately, whether they are able to get you to that result you want is something that is very, very RNG dependent, right? Even with the coins that were shown in the demo. Yeah. So for me, I feel like it's something that uh it's not really my jam, but if you're someone that again like people that enjoy stickerball, Gambonanza, like that the sort of okay, actually more stickerball, right? Yeah, if you enjoy that crazy RNG um potential, I think that is something that is definitely there for you. On the other hand, something that I think is clear and also ultimately skill dependent and best of both worlds is everything is crap. Like I think it's an instant S tier for me. Why I think that way is that it has a it has the things that Yamaneza and Racoin sort of don't have. So for Gambonanza, it has a certain skill that is accessible to me. Uh, so what is everything scrap? So basically, your amoeba. You start as an amoeba, and then you eat stuff, and as you eat stuff, you evolve and you get stronger, and you get upgrades to evolve. And when you evolve, you start hunting better game, and you continue evolving until you defeat the boss. Right. So very vampire survival like, very roguelike system. Right. So that is everything is crap. And I think it's very it also has so there's that skill element which is dodging all the skill shots, which is like moving, which is like selecting certain evolutions that lean into a specific gameplay style. So for example, like okay, if I buy a lot of armor, there's very highly likely I would get something like spikes, which will let me retaliate. uh, I could also get this. I think it was like hit butt or something like that. Or basically a passive upgrade that lets my attack scale with how much plating I have, right? And then okay, I become this like one shot tank that rolls around and storms everything, right? So that is uh, that build diversity, that accessibility, and that communication. Because okay, I communicate to the game that I want these kinds of upgrades. So can you give me something along those lines, right? And yeah, and I think that's what makes it a very strong S tier, right? And it's something that I'm definitely looking forward to pick up. Uh, yeah, so not much to say. I think it's something that you should try it out for yourself, to and see if you like it. Okay, esoteric ebb. Um, I think I would just put this next to Zero Parade because they are almost the same. Um, outside of the the environment that's in, right? So esoteric app is more medieval fantasy, but even in a medieval fantasy, there's still like communism, there's still capitalism in terms of the different factions that are present. Similarly, mm, anything I want to comment on app? Uh, I think it's I feel like app only touched the surface on what app could be. I feel like if this is something that I will probably want to take back and look at, because I feel like from my initial sort of 30-minute to 1 hour gameplay, again for this and Zero Parades, you definitely don't have enough to make a good judgment. But I can definitely say that in terms of the design, the environments, in terms of the overall law. It's there, but whether there is that payoff down the road in these mysteries is something that you can only say after you have committed, X number of hours or made X amount of progress into. Yeah. So yeah, I think for me it's safe to put it up there because it's a very polished experience, but it's hard to judge where the narrative of it goes. Right. Okay, next Cucina Stellata. Start cuisine. So the reason why I have the question mark category is sadly because this game just goes dead. Yeah. Uh, I think its initial sell was that it was this cosmic horror kind of game with cooking elements. So you basically try to cook ingredients that are like out of this world, and there's some level of like tripping out that happens because of that. Uh, but the main issue with my playthrough of the demo is that it's very short. I think it's only 5 to 10 minutes. You cook very much an ordinary meal. There are one, two sort of, I wouldn't even call them horror scenes, but very cosmic scenes. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I can't really tell what this game is, right? I can't really tell if this is going to be a horror game where you sort of cook stuff, but like monsters show up and freak you out, or is this a like a cooking game where you can choose what ingredients you want and then you can cook and you can serve to customers, or you can get certain um, trippy episodes because of what you cook, right? So I can't tell anything from this. So yeah, that's why it's there. It's in that category. Okay, moving on. Map. Map. I think it's definitely up there. Uh, in something that I definitely want to get the full game. Looking forward to it. I really like the premise that it has going for it. So, as the title goes, you are basically a person who works on maps, a cartographer, and you have these maps of the land masses, and on each of the land mass, you try to, like a geoguessr style, try to pinpoint certain landmarks on the landmass. You have a bunch of tools. You can do so, like a steps counter, a divider, etc., to help you triangulate the correct distance. And also in the environment that's set itself, there are also multiple secret or hidden maps that let you triangulate like optional prizes or optional items to figure out. So I think that puzzle solving element is the main draw, is the part that is really exciting on the puzzle aspect. But I think there were a few flaws that prevented it from going up to S. Mainly once or twice that I had issues with going out of bounds, basically flying off the map or falling through some crack. And the second thing is that some of the descriptions of the locations, right? So, for example, let's say, so one of the clues was like, oh, you need to walk 10 steps north and 5 steps east of the tower. But the thing is that the tower is pretty huge, so you have no idea which point to start from, right? And in addition, you have these you have these markings. How should I say it? Right, so the location is big, and the description is also somewhat obtuse, right? So let's say they had a ruin with a white stone, right? But you see multiple ruins with white stones, right? So you have, it feels like there is some level of issue with the accuracy in terms of the descriptions and the locations. So I think that is something that they, I think these are the two major things that would be nice if they could clear it up by the 1.0, but I definitely like the concept of it, of the game itself. Okay, next, Bloodletter. Bloodletter is a horror deck builder like, where you are basically cleansing this town of corruption. And so you have you build a deck of cards that do certain things for your town folk, and as such you will be able to defeat the corruption. So every turn you get better cards, but also every turn the corruption will spread and it will deal damage to your townspeople. So being able to choose the best cards is one thing, and of course having good synergy for your cards as well, but also managing things like sickness, trust within the community is also something that you need to be able to progress, right? I think uh, the game itself can be quite punishing, especially with the amount of options that you are given. And I think my main gripe with it is that mm, it sort of railroads you into a very certain play pattern, which I feel like isn't the objective of the game itself, right? So in the game, you will probably have around 8 to 12 villages in your town. But the thing is that you can only see like 5 or 6 of them. So ultimately, I mean, of course, you can. There's a townsperson that lets you manipulate which townsfolk you want to see. But ultimately, because of how the corruption works, you're going to end up basically killing quite a number of them, right? Uh, and it gets even worse there's also a trust element in the game. So if the villager trusts you, they give you that ability for you to use, right? For once every night. So for example, let's say I go back to the example of the queue person, right? So the townsperson that gives you the ability to choose which townsfolk that you want, right? But let's say if the townfolk distrust you, then you have no access to that ability, right? And again, if you have that RNG to not have that townsperson ever show up to change that trust level, you are ultimately not able to choose which town people you want to save. And this could mean that down the line, quite a number of townspeople are going to die because you just don't have access to them, right? So in a sense, you somewhat break your run because of that situation occurring, right? And you because of bad RNG not able to do anything about it, right? So I think that's my thing with the game is that very heavily on the balance perspective. Ultimately, you're just going to have 5 or 6 villagers that survive that you always see and that would hit your win con. Uh, whereas I guess the main goal should be trying to save everyone. I mean, actually, yeah, that's the part that ultimately, because of the amount of choice it has, and because of how its mechanics are, right? For first impressions, I can't really tell what the strategy is. And yeah, ultimately, because of that, it just seems like I didn't really know what to gun for. Yeah, but maybe if I play a bit more of the game, maybe I'll be able to tell what it is. But for me, in that initial few runs, it definitely feels quite oppressive to not be able to have the agency to uh set up a winning run, right? Yeah. So for me, it's also at A tier. It's something I'll definitely look out for and to see what it is. Okay, next Mole. Mole, another submarine S game. Mm, Similar, I guess, in feeling to Iron Lung. In that you are in a submarine with a couple of other fellow crewmates. The submarine, in the demo, basically, in the submarine, it's messed up, and you want to try to figure out what is going on in the mystery. I think the greatest draw, or the part that I most appreciated about Mo, is that the horror of it is very uh clear cut. Okay, not the horror of it, but the puzzle solving is very organic. That's the part that really uh, attracted me the most to it, right? So in terms of so one of the main puzzles is that you're trying to realign the coordinates of the mole submarine, right? And in order to do that, there isn't like a pure instruction manual lying there in the cockpit itself that tells you what exactly you need to do, right? So what you would need to do is that you need to look at a lot of the environment, a lot of the notes that are scattered around. You try to infer things, and from there, then you figure out how to actually get the coordinates based on this limited information that you can find not just in the cockpit but throughout the whole submarine, right? And I think that that's a part that was very fun. I think very fresh when it comes to puzzle solving, and that's because of that. I think that's why it really is something that goes up to the top. Yeah, I think there was only one gripe with it was that uh something to do with the object interaction, but otherwise, yeah, it's there. Okay, near the end, I think I missed out two more games, which I will type them in right now. Yes. Oh, okay, Bounce Castle. Bounce Castle. Bounce Castle is a game that is similar to slightly similar to Into the Breach, slightly similar to Fire Emblem, but unlike a grid based structure, it focuses more on flicking your units around to bump into other units to deal damage, so on and so forth, right? And of course, while you're flicking them around in this sort of pinball like system, there are traps. There are multiple enemies. There are also spawn portals that you can block. So a mechanic very similar to Breach. And your units have different abilities as well that let you manipulate the board, right? So for me, I think I finished the run of my first playthrough, and it's a game that has a very high ceiling. It's a very low floor, but a very high ceiling in terms of how you can manipulate the locations of your enemies, the where they land on, where your units land on, right? Because of this movement, right? I think it's not perfect. I think there's still quite a bit because unlike those grid-based examples I mentioned earlier, which have a very strong level of precision. Bounce Castle doesn't have that because again you're flicking stuff on the board, right? So for example, the starting mage has a ability called Gust, which pushes everything away, right? But because the gust is very strong, you often have no idea where the units you push end up in, right? So it's sort of a coin flip where you basically they can you want to push them to hit a trap, for example, but your push is so strong that it bumps into something else and then it flies, onto your crystal, which is like your main protection, your main goal to protect, right? And then you're just like screwed, right? Because of that. So I think there is that level of there's a certain level of RNG involved. But what makes it also different is that you can really start thinking out of the box in terms of bouncing stuff around because of that mechanism, right? So again, like in the there's the negative 50% example, but the positive 50% example is that it could hit something else, it bounce off, it hits a trap, it hits another enemy again, which also hits another trap, which perfectly sets you up for your archer's like piercing shot, right? To kill multiple units at once, right? So yeah, I think it's a game that has these flaws, but also because of these flaws, it makes it very intriguing. It makes it very interesting in terms of how it plays out. So I think it's something I'm definitely keeping my eye on. Um, and yeah, I think if it's something that has a very fleshed out variety in terms of units, in terms of spells, in terms of abilities, I can really see this being that sort of 100 to 100 hour game with uh, how much choice and player agency that comes out to it, right? So like, yeah, really like that XCOM esque feeling, right? In terms of your meta progression and your own gameplay ability. Yeah. Okay. Subject vision. Subject vision. It's also a horror game similar to Mole. Uh, I think the main appeal of this is that uh, you have two hands and each of your hand can hold a thing. So that gives you some limitation on what you can do. There are a few like puzzle solving elements to it. The enemies in the game are kind of a joke. I just ended up running past them. No repercussion whatsoever. But of course, my initial sort of foray was a bit of a sort of horror. I mean, a bit of a shock to it. Especially like when you're in a dark room and so what happened for me was basically I was in the dark room with only my lighter. I basically hit like an invisible wall, which I thought was an invisible wall, but it turned out to be like the enemy just lying there getting up. So I just booked it, right? Yeah. So yeah. Otherwise, what else is there? I think I quite appreciate the horror elements to the game. Definitely lighter than Mo, I feel. Uh, but again, I think subject vision was a lot shorter than Mo. The environments also were less fleshed out. It's basically walls with empty doors. Another thing that was interesting was there's this hypothermia meter, which means that ultimately you can't really like hide or play safe because you just end up ultimately freezing to death. So there is that bit of urgency in terms of moving point A to point B. I'm not sure how well it will play out for them though, because ultimately, if you end up running past all the enemies, is that really a horror game, right? Or is that just like a speedrun kind of game, right? So I think from my initial impression, it's intriguing, but yeah, I not too sure how well it would go. Hey, last game, last game. Finally done. Okay, black jacket. Uh, so it's blackjack, but roguelike blackjack. I think black jacket is a roguelike that I feel like it's if I want to put if I want to put something like a SS for black for like roguelites, it's like this and crab, right? I think it's this two, right? And then the rest these are like more story, more casual oriented games. But I think these two are the ones that I really want to look out for. So Black Jacket, what is it? You're basically playing blackjack out of hell to earn enough points and beat the bosses with your deck, right? I think stylistically it's up there. Uh, I think in terms of the variety of gameplay, it's up there. Because basically how it tries to vary things is that each of the suits has its own gameplay mechanic around it, right? So, for example, if you have clubs, you can basically take the opponent's points. Or if you have, for example, spades, you can um, give your opponent negative points that can sort of screw up their game plan, right? And yeah, so you have this sort of betting loop. And of course, you have that RNG in terms of trying to manipulate your deck. Uh, but of course, there is that caveat, which is that ultimately, if you want to have the most consistent run, you basically just shred all your twos to nines and keep your faces, your tens, and your aces, and then just gun for blackjack every round. Um, but of course, to be able to hit that point, you would need to invest quite a bit of capital, and your capital is basically your life, right? In terms of how much coin you can wager on. That ultimately depends on that ultimately lets you decide on what you can have. Yeah. I think again it's up there. I think because its gameplay loop is so strong, because of the variety it has, because of how tense that RNG can feel, right? Um, but I wouldn't say it's flawless. I think there are still quite a number of flaws to the game, personally. Um, for example, how your pot is limited. So basically, you can only have, without any upgrades, you only have up to 18 coins to spend, right? And if you earn any more beyond the threshold, it ultimately gets scrubbed. That is something that I feel like hurts quite a bit of the deck building potential, because even if you want to get stuff like artifacts, those cost like at least 14 to 15, which is definitely means that you're going into a game with like one or two life for an artifact upside, which isn't really that good. Another thing that I feel is, yeah, it just goes back to, well, you don't have as much incentive to get all the other smaller hand cards if you want to just jam out consistency, right? So that's where a lot of that sort of balancing comes into play. Or even in some whack case, you fight a boss and they have ultimately a strategy that ultimately screws you because you have no idea what's in their deck, right? That sort of thing, that happens. But I think that makes the game challenging. That makes the very tense situations very exciting, thrilling, and it also adds that complex to blackjack while preserving that original rules, the integrity of the rules, to make it simple to pick up, right? So it's complex because you can mix up your combination of cards, you can manipulate what you play, what your opponent plays, but ultimately your goal is still 21, right? And I think that sort of balance makes it very addictive to play. Yeah. So okay, so that's about it. For my next fest February 26th tier list. If you have any games that you want me to check out, you can leave it down in the comments. Yeah, like and subscribe if you like the video. And yes, please do check out these games. Show your support to these devs, and hopefully, yeah, pick them up when they come out when it comes to 1.0. Yep, that's all. Bye bye.